Hidden Gems, Episode 9, Mining for Hidden Gem Mining Games, with Hidden Gems. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Cameron. Thanks for listening to our show.
Yeah, welcome back, folks.
Welcome back. It's good to be here. So, what have you guys been up to lately?
Jason, what have you been up to? I know we've been talking a little bit about some TV shows we've been watching lately.
Yeah, so I've been watching Invincible, which is probably pretty well known to most people if you have Amazon Prime. I never knew about this comic. It was a popular comic from like the early 2000s to like 2018 or something like that is when the last issues, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, I did not know this one, to be totally honest.
Yeah, the first season is out on Amazon right now, and it's good. It draws a lot of similarities to The Boys, if you've watched The Boys, but I think I actually like it better. It might be one of the most violent television shows I've ever watched, and that's saying something, Game of Thrones and whatever else I've seen. So definitely not a show for the kids.
Is it really more violent than The Boys, though? I just have a hard time.
I think it is.
Really?
Yeah. I haven't watched all of The Boys, so I know there's more stuff coming, but the frequency of it and the scale, because it's animated, right? So they can they can do whatever they want.
Right.
And it's pretty intense in parts.
I mean, that's pretty crazy to me, because if you watch The Boys, I mean, they blew somebody up by sticking a bomb up somebody's rear end. So,
Gosh.
Yeah, it goes beyond that.
It's pretty violent, honestly, but you've got me intrigued for sure.
Yeah, definitely not one for the kids, but it held my attention all the way through. It's a good one. Looking forward to the next season.
Yeah, I want to check that one out for sure. It's on my list. Cameron, what about you? What have you been doing?
You guys know I moved recently, and I've got this barn, and I'm trying to turn it into a workshop, and I actually have a table going. I'm trying to build a worktop table, and it's taking way longer than I expected to. So I've been...
Always does.
I keep reciting the mantra of Dave Ramsey, what you focus on is what happens. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just laser focused on trying to finish this darn table. That's what I've been doing, that and watching a lot of woodworking YouTube videos and trying to train up.
That wood shop is going to be amazing when you're finished with it, though.
Real...
I'm quite jealous.
On top of that, I'm working on that table. It's the only thing I'm actually building right now, but I've recently gotten into designing in SketchUp. So I have like a 3D design background and stuff like that. You guys know I went to film school, and I was doing 3D animation and stuff like that. So it's been really fun to get back into it, like a 3D modeling program, and actually, in this case, designing things at a precision level. So,
great tool for that. I've used it on a lot of personal woodworking projects and whatnot. It's really helpful.
I've been figuring out how to work out all the things that I would probably make a bunch of mistakes and ruin a bunch of material.
Sure.
So it's kind of like you're building in the wood shop, but like before you pick up any tools or cut any materials. It's been a lot of fun lately.
Awesome.
And of course, we're still expecting a little one, and we just entered the third trimester, so Casey's feeling more and more uncomfortable, and we're anticipating... We were going to a birthing class. It's great. We're learning all sorts about... Yeah, we are. Yeah, it's been fantastic.
We did that long ago.
Really? We never did that. We just flew by the seat of our pants on all four, literally.
Gal from our small group actually runs a company that runs the classes, and it's been really informative, preparative, I guess.
Well, it certainly couldn't hurt.
Sure.
Fortunately for Casey, the weather in North Carolina is getting to its nicest for being pregnant, I'm sure.
She's doing great, though. We kicked back on the porch for a little bit this afternoon. The porch, which is finally done, by the way. We resurfaced it and everything. It's nice. We're enjoying the new place and everything.
Good deal.
What about you?
Yeah, really excited to be talking about what I've been into lately. I've been playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Oh,
finally.
Yes.
After too long. I mean, it's been out for almost 2 years now,
right?
I think. I don't know if I mentioned it on the show or not, but Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games of all time. If not my favorite. Just love that game. I think it came out at just the right time for me, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It kind of hit me at that real impressionable stage in my youth, you know what I mean? So I was 15 when Final Fantasy VII came out.
Back when those were good graphics.
So I remember watching the cutscenes from Final Fantasy VII and just being blown away by them, which just wouldn't pass now. Nothing really in the game passes now except for the gameplay, which is still good. If you look at the characters, they look like polygons. Their heads are triangles and their forearms are huge rectangles. It just looks terrible, right? But the game is great. But I remember when I was young, experienced it so strongly. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just really getting into the story. It had a huge impact on me. I played it several times. So the remake came out. I was worried about it. I'm happy to say that they did an amazing job on it. And if anything, it's probably even better.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they just got everything right. The materia system, they didn't change it at all, which I was glad about.
Really?
They left it totally intact.
Okay.
The gameplay, it's not totally menu-based. It's a mix of real-time where you're running around and slashing, but when you go into the menus, everything slows way down.
Oh.
And so it's almost as if you're like in a turn-based, but you're still in real-time.
So it gives you a chance to kind of plan your maneuvers or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're kind of like running through your spell menu and you're thinking, and then when you cast it, it speeds back up again and you're in real time again. They just did an awesome job. So yeah, I'm just happy to report that the game is good. I'm not quite there yet. I've probably got about 5 more hours to go.
Wow,
but,
okay. You're pretty good ways in.
Yeah, but keep in mind too that it's short. So this game is actually only about the first 5 to 10 hours of the first game.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, so they're going to release more of these over time. At least that's my understanding.
So it's like the first disc?
Pretty much. Yeah. It's like the first disc of the first game.
Okay.
Yeah. So excited to see what they're going to do with it.
Wow.
I have to sadly admit I've never played a Final Fantasy game.
That is shameful.
Well,
your nerd cred just keeps dropping and dropping on this show.
I know.
Turn in your nerd card.
I've never played through like a real RPG outside of Chrono Trigger, but I think I might have. It is. I might have mentioned it on the last episode. I don't remember, but I am playing through Octopath Traveler now, which is interesting. It's long. It's real long, but I'm enjoying the genre a little bit more. So maybe I'll have to give Final Fantasy VII a shot.
So awesome.
You'll have to let us know how it ends.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I plan on playing it tonight. Actually,
just spoil it for everyone listening to the podcast. So, as usual, we have a cocktail for the episode. What are we drinking tonight?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the title, we're talking about games with a mining theme. I hope that came across in the title. A little bit clunky. We really had a hard time figuring out how we were going to title this episode, but we are doing games with a mining theme. So for my drink this episode, decided to do a drink called the Belmont Jewel.
All right.
Because it has Jewel in the name.
Yep.
If anything, this is really a horse racing drink.
Okay, right.
So it's named the Belmont Jewel for the Belmont Stakes.
Right.
So Churchill Downs, the Kentucky Derby has the mint julep. The Preakness has a drink known as the Black-Eyed Susan. And the Belmont has the Belmont Jewel.
Okay.
So the Belmont Jewel is a super simple drink. It's 1.5 ounces of whiskey bourbon, and then 2 ounces of lemonade, and an ounce of pomegranate juice.
Okay.
Shaken and served. That's it. Very simple.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you ever go to the Belmont, you can get a Belmont Jewel.
Because we had to do a cocktail instead of just a pint of ale or something.
That's right.
You might expect out of mining.
A dwarf theme. Yeah. I know you were ready. I have no doubt that you were ready to let a dwarf accent rip today.
We'll see.
I know you're excited.
We'll see.
Well, speaking of mining and our theme,
yes,
thought we would give a quick update on our BGG mining efforts.
Yeah, where we at, Jason?
It's been a while since we talked about it. I think we talked about this maybe back in episode 2 or 3.
Yep.
And at the time, if I'm remembering correctly, we were at around 45,000 entries on BGG. So just to recap a little bit, I've been slowly working my way sequentially through game IDs on BGG in a controlled fashion, so it doesn't take forever, but to try to figure out how many hidden gems we can find in the entire database. There are about 350,000 or so entries in there, so it's going to take a while.
Yep.
But I will say that since episode 3, when we were at 45,000, I'm at 115,000.
Dude.
Wow. We broke 100.
And that's with me not really having touched it in the past month and a half.
Because our playlist is super long.
Yeah, we already have way more games than we're ever going to get to.
I've actually been going through the guild. So guild members, your recommendations are not falling on deaf ears. I actually have a Word document where I'm putting together potential episode ideas and shuffling everybody's recommendations into those episodes, basically. And it's like 400 games. I mean, it's crazy.
Just from the guild, 400 games.
Well, not just from the guild. from the guild plus games from my collection that would round out the episode.
Yeah. You're going to dust off some of these from your shelves?
Dusting off some of mine, plus making some acquisitions. I just bought 3 games off a Miniature Market Memorial Day sale, actually, from some guild member recommendations. So we're ready to get into them.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone for contributing.
Heck yeah.
So speaking of which, as we've been going through, I was going to highlight a couple of the games that I found that seemed particularly odd or interesting to me, but I know you have a few, Chris.
Me too.
Why don't you list a couple of yours?
Yeah. So I don't do this nearly as systematically or intelligently as Jason does. I browse the BGG rankings and just like, oh, this game looks cool, and I make a note of it. So there's a game that I'm interested in checking out called Hinkelstein, and it was produced by Chili Spiel. It's ranked 12,039 in the BGG database.
Okay.
But what's interesting about this game is the game, you get rocks. Okay, it's rocks in a box, basically. All these different types of rocks.
Actual rocks.
Actual rocks.
Theoretical rocks.
Yeah, no, rocks. I mean, they're probably made out of some sort of material.
Okay.
I guess maybe they're plastic, but they look and feel like rocks. And you have a long board. It's like a seesaw that balances on a fulcrum. And you're setting these rocks on either side of the seesaw, trying to... It's like a betting game. I think from what I can gather, you're trying to decide what end is going to drop, basically, based on the weights and the position of the stones. But the stones also have special powers associated with them. It's weird.
Okay.
Okay. Which is why I'm interested in it. It's really bizarre.
Okay.
But it is so hard to find.
Okay.
Chili Spiel is a dead company. They're actually the people that did Neue Heimat, which was remade as The Estates by Capstone Games, which was impossible to find for a long time.
Yep.
So, guild members, if you have a copy of Hinkelstein that you don't want and you would like to sell it to us, I would be happy to buy it because you cannot find this game, but I'm intrigued by it.
Or you should just go out and find some rocks.
Or just make it myself. Print and play.
Yeah. Scrounge from the gravel from the driveway and play.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a weird one.
Only if your gravel has special powers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I found a couple too as I've been going through, and I kind of threw this together pretty quickly, so this is not an exhaustive list by any means. But one that I found that Tom Vessel's actually reviewed it, but it was surprising to me. I'd never heard of it. It's called Magical Athlete.
Oh,
have you heard of this?
Yes, I have.
It's a racing game. And it looks super chaotic, and it's one of the ugliest games I think I've ever seen. But it's supposed to be pretty good and short. You're racing around an oval track, but each of the characters, and there's like 40-some characters that you can be. Each character has a special ability that is triggered by other abilities that other characters can do and whatnot. So it seems intriguing to me. But again, I don't know if we would ever find a copy of that anywhere. Another one that I found that I'd never heard of was an Uwe Rosenberg game actually called Clunker.
Yes.
Clunker with a K, which seems similar to Bargain Hunter somewhat, except you're collecting jewels and trying to make jewelry, which will be surprisingly relevant to this episode. But that one seemed pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Plenty of others on the list, but we'll leave it at that for now.
It's hard to choose. I had one more. I'm so excited about this game. So as you know, well, at least between Cameron and myself, our love of Dungeons and Dragons runs deep.
Oh, yeah.
Jason's a D&D hater. It's too cool for D&D.
No voices from me, except for pirates.
I think voices would be required for this game. I came across a game that I've never heard of. I just stumbled across it in the rankings. It's called Dragon Strike. It was published in 1993 by TSR. So TSR, that's Gary Gygax's company, that was responsible for publishing all the first and second edition D&D modules back in the 80s, right? So Dragon Strike was a game that they released in an attempt to rejuvenate the company because sometime around the mid to late 80s, some of the partners within the company made some really bad business choices. They ran into some financial trouble from which they just couldn't recover. But Dragon Strike was designed as an attempt to reintroduce energy into the D&D franchise to try to save the company, basically. It's my understanding. It's very similar to Hero Quest. But what's better about Dragon Strike is it's very much more like D&D. It's not just go into a dungeon and do encounters. So you have a party of adventurers who are cooperatively taking on the DM, or in this game, the Dragon Master. So it's all the players versus the Dragon Master. And in this game, you can actually interact with enemies and monsters. You can talk to them. You don't have to fight them, which is very much like an old school D&D inspired type of thing. And the icing on the cake, really, for this thing is this game comes with a 30-minute long VHS tape, which you can watch this on YouTube, and I highly recommend that you at least watch the first 5 minutes of it. It's hilarious.
It's such high quality.
Oh my gosh. So the Dragon Master is like a disembodied head. He's wearing this black turtleneck sweater behind this black screen, so his head floating in space. And he's reading the story of this world. And it's actually interesting. The video is kind of instructional. Mm-hmm. So it's telling the story, and then it'll cut away to the board game and explain how the story works in the board game. It's like they're teaching it almost through the VHS video. And it has just some laugh out loud funny moments in this videotape. It's great.
It's awesome.
It is.
I can't
Sounds
wait.
quality.
It's so good. I thought it might be worth us doing a little bit of a voice reenactment.
Dramatic reading.
A dramatic reading, let's say, of the first couple of minutes of Dragon Strike's VHS tape.
This is as close as you're going to get me to doing Dungeons and Dragons, by the way.
And action.
Is this like a video game?
Sort of, but it uses the most powerful information processor in the world. Your brain.
Cool. So how do we play?
Do we have to read a bunch of rules?
Not this time. This time, I'm the Dragon Master, and you are the adventurers.
Is it okay if I watch until I get the hang of it?
You don't need to get the hang of anything. Imagination is all you need. Close your eyes, open your mind, and I'll transport you to another realm.
Oh, yeah?
It's night, a long time ago. You see a castle. This castle belongs to the evil wizard Teractus. The castle's high towers and jagged walls glow in the light like the dull white of a skull.
It's poetry. How would you not want to play a game that has that in it? Oh, I'm so pumped. I'm getting this game.
I can't wait.
Do you have a VCR?
I mean, we just watch it on YouTube. But it would be cool to have the VHS tape. This is happening, folks. I'm acquiring this game. I'm super excited about it.
Can't wait.
Yep.
It's going to be like 2011 all over again, figuring out how to play D&D the first time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to be mysteriously absent for that episode.
No, you're not either. All right, so I think that takes us through the mind and effort. Those are some of the games that we're excited about, and I think we'll go ahead and transition into the games. Yeah.
Yep. Let's do it.
All right.
An ancient dwarven city under the mountain lies in ruins, and the dwarves are determined to recover the lost treasure. 8 dwarven mining companies are ready to finance the project. You represent a party of dwarf prospectors that enjoy digging and would not mind getting rich in the process. On each of your turns, you will dig on behalf of one of the mining companies and receive rewards for everything you may find. You will also have a chance to expand your party and invest in these companies on a stock market in hopes to get a share of the profits.
Love it. You're
Nice.
taking me back. That's me reliving Bluefield all over again.
Yeah.
My favorite dwarf character.
Perfect.
Excellent. All right, Dwarves Incorporated, published in 2015 by Asa Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 11,882.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's high.
that's high. Breaking 10,000. That's always scary. Might have another smiley face situation here, and we'll find out. So the designer of this game, Andre Borago, who I do not know. He has a couple of other published designs, and one of them is pretty highly ranked. So he has a game called Conquest of the Fallen Lands that's ranked 2,965.
Wow.
That's not terrible. I have never heard of that game, but he does have other designs. I heard about this game from Tom Vassell. Tom reviewed this game 5 years ago, I think, and he reviewed it very highly. He was very keen on this game, but he mentioned at the time that he felt like he feared that it would fall into obscurity just because of unknown designer, unknown publisher, and he was right. No, I've never heard anybody talk about this game, but it made an impression on me, so I picked it up. Give it a try. So, brief rules summary. In Dwarves Incorporated, the idea behind this game is we are all influencing the actions of different dwarven companies who are located inside a mine. Okay? So the board is made up of numerous small squares. Okay? It's a gridded board. And in the center of the board are 8 gems in 8 different locations. And these represent the starting locations of the 8 mining companies. And you're going to be extending these companies out into the mines in an attempt to collect the most wealth. The way that works is very simple. On your first turn of the game, you will choose a color of gem, a mining company, and you will lay those gems out adjacent to previously placed gems. They just have to be orthogonally adjacent. That's the only rule. Okay?
3 gems, right?
3 gems. Out on the board, they can branch. It can go in any direction that you want. Okay? After you've placed those 3 gems onto the board, you will then choose 4 different colored gems that will be your initial holding that you'll put on your player board. These are basically the companies that you're investing in. You're saying, hey, these are the companies that I think are going to do well or that I'm going to try to make do well, because if these companies score and I have either a first or a second place majority in these companies, I'll score points. Mm-hmm. After the first turn of the game, you will continue to lay 3 gems, all the same color of your choice on the board, but then you have the option of switching one of those gems out with a different colored gem of your choice. And this is where you can start gathering majorities in certain colored companies that you think or want to do well. That's what you do on your turn. Now, where do the decisions come in? Well, it all has to do with how you lay your gems out, how you have these mining companies going out on the board. So on the board, you have empty spaces, but you also have icons on the board that if you cover up those icons with a gem, it will do something for you. Okay? So for example, if you cover up a pile of gold, this is how a scoring happens. If the black gem covers up a pile of gold on the board, whoever has the most number of black gems will get a first place scoring, and that's based on the number of dwarves in your company. Whoever has the second place scoring will get a smaller amount of points based on the number of dwarves in their company. Okay. There are other spaces on the board that you can cover, dwarf spaces that will add dwarves to your company, which will make you more profitable. There are safes on the board that you can cover up, and that will add to your gem holdings. So you can add another gem to your holdings to increase your influence. And then there are tunnel entrances on the board that you can place in and jump to other sides of the map. And then lastly, there are treasure chests on the board that will give you special cards. And these are all good. There are good cards, and they will let you do really powerful things in the game. There's one more thing I should mention, and I wanted to save this to last. There is something known as a finder's bonus. So I had mentioned that when you cover up a gold pile, whoever's in first and second will score. But even if you're not in first and second, if you cover up a gold pile, you will get a finder's bonus where you will get points equal to the number of dwarves in your party, even if you don't have gem majority in that color. So it's kind of incentivizing you to cover up gems even if it doesn't benefit you from a majority standpoint. Game ends once all the gold piles are covered. Most points wins. And that's basically how you play Dwarves Incorporated. So as I mentioned, Dwarves Incorporated is published by basically an unknown publisher, Ace Games, never heard of them, and a pretty unknown game designer. So as you might imagine, the production quality is not spectacular here. So my question to y'all would be, what were your initial impressions when you saw the game? Were you as bothered by that? Did it impress you? Were you worried about it? Were you worried that maybe this game wasn't going to be very good based on the way that it looked on the table? What were your first impressions of the game?
Well, my first impression of the game was that it kind of looked like cardboard vomit on the table.
Oh, yeah.
It's just colors all over the place, and the grid spaces are pretty small, and the background is this bright, gaudy blue color, and then you have all these different colors and symbols and stuff on top of it. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah, it's busy.
The art itself, I didn't have a problem with the art. I thought the art was actually fairly decent considering the overall rank of the game and whatnot. It's just the way they chose to use the art. The graphic design of it could have been a little bit less eyesore-inducing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There were a couple things that I really had a hard time with regard to the art. There are areas where there's like little houses or little platforms that were built into the art, and they are well drawn, you might say. But I played this game multiple times, and every single time someone was like, so can I move through this wall, or can I go in that house? What happens if I go there? It was like, nothing, it's just art. And so it kind of took away from distracted from the mechanics of the game rather than enhanced it. And beyond that, it's a little garish, maybe is a good word for it.
Yeah.
So my initial impression was, what are we getting ourselves into here, kind of?
Yeah. Mine too. I'll be totally honest. When I opened it up, I thought the artwork looked kind of amateurish, to be totally honest, especially on the cards. The card art is not great, in my opinion. So it's funny how when you go into games, at least for me, a lot of times I will go into a game almost subconsciously thinking I'm not going to like this game before I've even played it, right? Which is just not fair. But that's just how we are, right? I think that's the importance of artwork and graphic design to really suck somebody in.
So you judge a book by its cover.
I do. I definitely do. I think that I was. But I will say, this game reminded me a lot of Spectaculum. And that's a good thing, because if you have been listening to our podcast, you know that we love Spectaculum. And it shares a lot of similarities to Spectaculum. The placing the jewels down on the board, much like you place the disc down in Spectaculum. You're invested in companies. And it gave me a good feel based on that alone, because it just evoked a lot of the same emotions. It had a lot of tough decisions. Now, the question is, can it stand on its own 2 feet? Right? If you've got a game like Spectaculum, is there a need for a game like this? Well, what do you guys think about that?
I saw the parallels to Spectaculum right away, too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about this, as opposed to how Spectaculum approaches the shareholding concept, is that not only are you trying to acquire shares in these different companies, acquiring the different jewels, but the amount that you can score is based on how many dwarves you have on your board. And that's a whole separate effort, right? There's different tracks that you're trying to go down.
Yep.
Do I swap out my jewels to try to get the majority in a particular company? Do I go after those spaces that give me more jewels so that I can just boost my ability to have majorities more than other people? Or do I forget about all of that and just go after more dwarves in my company so that when I do score, I'm getting way more points than everybody else?
Yep.
Right? I thought that was an interesting balance.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the things that Spectaculum doesn't do that this game does do is those on-the-board spaces that you cover, which ones you're going to cover, makes for some really tough decisions. I felt like I was having a hard time. Do I cover up this dwarf and add to my party, or maybe I should just go in this tunnel and jump over here and try to get to these gems, or do I try to add another gem to my holding? It was a hard decision. Whereas in Spectaculum, it's a hard decision too, but it's just, do I want to make this go up or go down?
Yeah.
Here, there are more things to think about, in that the spaces just do so many different things, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I definitely feel like in comparison, Spectaculum is much more of the abstract version of this type of game, I guess, of whatever you want to call it, space covering. But Dwarves Inc., I think, true to the theme, uncovers several paths that you can take down, right? Which Jason was just kind of describing. Do I go for this sort of diversity and collect more and more gems and be able to score on multiple different colors when they're scored? Or do I recruit more people? Or do I go for these treasure cards? We haven't even talked about them yet, but it's a powerful path that you can go down if you
Very
choose
powerful.
to do that.
Yeah. I think this game also reminded me a little bit of Five Tribes. Did you get that feeling at all?
I didn't really put that together, but now that you mention it, it does.
Like,
Yeah,
you're
a little
looking
bit.
at the board like you do in Five Tribes, and you're trying to figure out, okay, which move is the optimal move here? Like, I know it's here. I'm going to keep searching until I find it, because it's very easy to miss the optimal move in this game. As you mentioned, I've played this game and I'll make a move and then somebody will go after me. I was like, oh crap, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
I didn't even see that you could do that, right? I feel like this happens a lot in this game. I feel like that happens in Five Tribes. Just because there's so much going on the board, you just miss it. You know what I mean?
Especially when you think about the tunnels, for example, because they can come out of nowhere. You can have, you'll be the guy that's holding green, and no one else in the game is holding green. And then green doesn't look like it can move anywhere because all the spaces around it are covered up by other colors. But green happens to be one space away from a tunnel, and now green pops up and just obliterates a corner of the scoring opportunity.
All those gems over there.
And takes it away from you when you were planning to do that with your big pile of black gems or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I saw that happen a few times.
Yeah. So you mentioned the cards too, Cameron. Jason, I think you had some strong feelings about the cards in this game. How'd you feel about that?
When we played this game, I got some really powerful special cards. I got 2 of the same card, actually.
Right.
Oh,
and so
Is it the one that doubled your recruiters? Or your
it
dwarf?
made my number of dwarves really high or something. And then I got that twice. And so every time I was involved in a scoring, I was scoring a bajillion points. And that made a huge difference. I don't know 100% how I feel about the cards. I mean, you obviously have to dedicate effort to get them.
Sure.
Right? You have to spend your turns going after those particular spaces that give you those cards.
Yep.
But it is a little bit of a crapshoot in terms of what you get. I think some of the cards are really great all the time. Some of the cards are really great in the right circumstances.
Situational. Yep.
And that can be really tough to swallow if you go through all that effort to grab a card and it's just not the right card for you. And then somebody else goes through the effort, they draw the next card, and it's like the perfect card for them, and they just crush everybody with it. I think that can be a little bit deflating.
Yeah, these cards can be swingy as heck. I mean, I've played this game several times, and I've seen people... It's kind of funny in the moment when it's not you. Thankfully, it wasn't me in this case, but I've seen people go from, this person is definitely going to win, to losing based on one card. I played a game with Dan Smith. He had the game won easy. Mm-hmm. And Bill drew a card that just pretty much negated Dan's entire turn, and Bill scored all the points off of his turn, basically, and he ended up losing. I mean, that's just how this game can go. If that sounds horrific to you, then just don't go here, you know? Just be aware that can happen. But at the same time, I guess it keeps you engaged, right?
They make the game really interesting. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of game where everybody kind of feels like they're in it, you know? Yeah. Everybody's kind of scoring. You're trying to get ahead, but you can Hail Mary and gain some ground if you get the right cards.
I feel like that's a common issue in a lot of games, really, where there is this stack of potential power-ups. If they're not balanced, where they're all generally, you know, say on a scale of 1 to 10, they're all generally a 4 to a 6 in terms of how good they are. It can go badly because then you're just like, oh man, I go there and I get the crappy thing that does nothing for me. And you go there and you get the thing that like doubles your points. I feel like it can be imbalanced.
That can be upsetting.
Right.
Smiley face, anyone?
Not as bad as Smiley face.
But they're not trying to, I mean, obviously this game, they're not trying to be mischief cards.
I don't think so either. I think they gave a good effort with the cards. Mm-hmm. But basically, you just have to be so careful with special ability cards about them feeling balanced to your players, or otherwise people are going to feel cheated and then people aren't going to want to play the game, right? And I feel like sometimes people just feel like, man, I played a good game and then you beat me because you just drew this awesome card. I think we undervalued the card draw spot a lot in our earlier plays. Any other thoughts?
The only other thing that you mentioned was the finder's bonus. I think that's an interesting dynamic to this game, because in a lot of games, Spectaculum included, to a degree, it incentivizes the person who has the largest holding of a company to be the one who's driving that company forward. And other people are trying to slow that down, but they don't really have any incentive to move it forward.
Right.
In this game, they flip that on its head a little bit by saying, well, if you're the person who triggers it, you're going to get a bonus.
And it's not small.
It's not small.
It's not undersized, I don't think.
Well, we saw a couple times where like the person who was the finder and received that bonus for scoring it, even though they didn't hold the majority of gems in that company, they actually benefited as much or more than some of the people who did have those majorities. And you can short circuit somebody's plan to really score big if they're like working up to that by just going ahead and knocking it out early.
I think I did that to you at one point.
Yeah, you probably did.
So I think you were going to like acquire another one or another gem of that kind, and I was just like, nope, I'm not going to wait for you to get there and get more points out of it.
Right.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it too. I just feel like that little small rule keeps the game moving. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If it wasn't there, I feel like the game would stall out and you'd have just a lot of like stalling and building to nowhere, trying to avoid scoring. But I feel like that keeps the game moving along so it doesn't go longer than it should.
Yep.
So it was just a great addition to the game, I think.
For sure.
Cool. So do we want to move on to final thoughts?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I can go first, I guess. I enjoyed this game when we played it. It's definitely not deserving of the miserable rank that it has on BGG. It did feel very similar to Spectaculum, and I think that might be its fatal flaw for me, along with the special cards that we've already talked about. I gave this game a 3. I wanted to enjoy it more than I did, but I think those special cards left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And when you compare it to a game like Spectaculum that does this same mechanic so well, for me, it fell a little bit flat because of those cards.
Okay.
So for me, I think Dwarves Inc. is a great game. It isn't terribly short, but I think it has a reasonable length for what it offers. I think there's some great decisions to make, some enjoyable tension. You're often required to make tactical changes as the board evolves to either prevent or take advantage of your opponent's moves, which I think is a good thing. I thought it was fun. I'm going to give it a 4. I would recommend folks give it a try. Since we're talking about the comparison to Spectaculum, all day long, Spectaculum wins out because I think I gave it a 5.
Yeah.
I would probably maybe even rank it higher than that in hindsight.
Which game is going to get that
game.
elusive 6
I know.
from you?
What game's going to get it? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think Spectaculum is probably better of this type of game, but I don't feel meh about it. I would play it again. I would encourage folks to give it a try.
Yeah, so I definitely feel compelled to comment on how it compares to Spectaculum as well. I think since you all did, I think the comparisons are very clear. I will just come out and say I think Spectaculum is also a superior game. Again, it was a 5 for me, nearly a 6. It's just a pure, clean design, whereas Dwarves Incorporated has rough edges, and I think that's what you were kind of getting at, Cameron. It's got some rough edges, but I don't mind rough edges in games. I can tolerate that because I think sometimes they allow for interesting decisions. If the cards weren't so situationally swingy, this game would be higher for me.
Yeah,
I
same.
enjoyed this. I'm keeping this game. I gave this game a 4. I think it was fun. I think it's different enough from Spectaculum to justify a place on the shelf and get pulled down from time to time when we're in the mood. It's simple to play, like Spectaculum. It's a different experience for sure. I just wish it wasn't as swingy, and I wish it looked better. It just looks crappy, you know?
Yep.
But maybe they'll get a better reprint and a little bit of a rules overhaul at some point. It'd be cool.
Well, those are our thoughts on Dwarves Inc.
Yep.
Where can we find Dwarves Inc.?
Yeah, hard to find, unfortunately, as usual. So this one is a bit rare. There are only 2 copies of this on BGG and only 2 copies on eBay as well. So if you want it, you better grab it. However, this particular company, Ace of Games, it appears that they use Amazon as their distributor of their games. And I've seen this game on Amazon before, and they have an active website. So I wonder if it might come back into print. So maybe keep an eye on Amazon and see if it might pop up there if you want to try to pick it up. I think it's possible. But as of right now, it's a little hard to find.
All right.
Well, those are our thoughts on Dwarves Inc.
In ancient Norse legend, Freya, the goddess of fertility and passion, owed at least part of her reputation for her irresistible beauty to an enchanting necklace, the Brisingamen. According to the legend, Freya struck a deal with the dwarves in which she would trade her favors with each of the 4 dwarfs who delivered her a segment of the necklace. That deal would set a path to much unhappiness, death, and destruction. But that is a story for another time. This game follows the story of the creation of the Brisingamen. You are a skilled dwarf craftsman, making fine jewelry that brings much wealth and prestige to the dwarfs. Will you be tempted by Freya's offer and turn your hand to crafting a piece of the Brisingamen?
So good. The Brisingamen.
The Brisingamen?
The Scottish dwarves for the Nordic mythology.
The Scandinavian, yeah. That was
We're
good though,
Norse
man.
dwarves.
I enjoyed that.
Oh man, I miss D&D.
Yeah, me too, man.
Freya's Folly, published in 2005 by Sagacity Games, designed by Don Bone, and currently ranked on BGG 5022.
May I make an interjection real quick?
No.
Because I just can't help myself. So Don Bone has designed one other game that I desperately want to find and play, but it's hard to acquire, called Sunda to Sahul. Have you heard of this?
No.
So it's a jigsaw puzzle game.
What?
Yes! You're building the board out of jigsaw puzzle pieces, building islands.
Wow.
Sunda to Sahul. Yeah, I'm intrigued by it. I've heard about it before from
You think people just keep losing pieces of the puzzle?
Yeah, that's right. I can't finish this island. Yeah, but anyways, sounds cool. Just wanted to interject that.
Cool. Well, before we get into the actual rules for this game, there was a bit of a cliffhanger in the flavor text there about all this death and destruction that came of this Brisingamen necklace that Freya commissioned. So I did a little bit of digging into Wikipedia around the mythology here, and so I thought I'd share a couple points. So Freya was apparently a very powerful goddess in Norse mythology, up there with Odin and the other major well-known Norse gods. She was the goddess of love and sexuality, and she really desired this particularly beautiful necklace called the Brisingamen, and found some dwarves who were in the process of making it. So she offered them her favors, which, given what I just said, I'll let you read into what that means.
Interesting.
Offered her favors in exchange for this necklace. But it talked about this death and destruction. So what I found was interesting. Apparently, Loki, who is like the god of mischief or trickery or something like that.
Yep, mischief.
Odin tells Loki to go and steal the necklace from Freya. And so she comes to Odin to get it back, and he agrees to give it back, but in exchange, she has to create 2 kings, each of which have 20 kings under them, who will battle for eternity just constantly. Just battle each other. Just death and destruction.
This is so Norse.
Yeah. Is that Ragnarok?
Maybe. I don't know.
Or is that... Yeah.
Isn't that what it's called? Ragnarok? The like eternal battle?
Yeah, I think so.
Like that's what the Norse, like the Vikings were like all about.
Okay.
In Valhalla.
Death and glory.
We'll see there. I don't know my Norse mythology well enough, but...
It's because you hate blood rage.
yeah, maybe that's why.
It's because you're a blood rage hater.
Maybe that's why. So these kings have to fight forever until some noble person is willing to enter into the battle to end it. And so she does. She agrees to it, and it happens. And then there's some further story about some lord who enters into the battle and ends the curse.
Huh.
But I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's cool.
In addition... The general going mythology, I guess, is that when warriors are slain, they go to Valhalla, right? But apparently Freya actually got first choice of the warriors who were killed in battle, so she would obviously choose the best-looking ones or whatnot. So it's actually possible that a lot of the warriors in Blood Rage are actually going to Freya's domain rather than
Freya's
Valhalla.
a weirdo.
Yeah.
It's giving me a whole new perspective on this game.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the rules to this game. In Freya's Folly, players are vying for points via completing jewelry. There are a variety of setting cards out there where there are different jewel requirements in order to complete these settings, and players are venturing into one giant mine in order to collect jewels of different colors and bring them back to the surface to complete these jewelry settings. The board is a large fixed network of passages that all lead downwards from one main entrance, and it branches out all over the place to these little caverns that have randomly distributed numbers of gems. Along these passages at different points are lanterns, and these lanterns are important for movement. So each player has tokens that represent their dwarves, and these dwarves get sent down into the tunnels to collect jewels and bring them back up to the surface. So on a player's turn, you get to take any 2 of 7 different actions that you have available to you. You can do the same action twice, you can do 2 different actions, it's up to you. The most important action is movement. When you move a dwarf, you can move him as far as he can get without passing over more than one lantern. As soon as he hits a lantern, he has to stop, with the exception of one rule, which is that when a dwarf hits a lantern, his token covers over that lantern space. And so if a subsequent dwarf enters the mine, on one movement, you're allowed to jump over up to 2 other dwarves.
Yep.
So that can potentially allow you to skip over lanterns and jump to a further spot through the mine than you would normally be able to get to.
Leapfrogging.
Yep. If you land in a cavern that has jewels, you can optionally pick up those jewels, place them into your wheelbarrow. That can only be done once. If that dwarf manages to move in reverse back out of the mine to the entrance, then those jewels are removed from the wheelbarrow, they get placed in your personal player pool, and then they can be used to complete these jewelry settings. The other actions that are available to you, I'm just going to go through them briefly, but you can take a setting card, which has a number of points that you'll receive for completing it, and a number of negative points that you'll receive if you take it and you don't complete it by the end of the game. You can complete a setting card. So if you have all of the jewels that are required to complete that card, you can place those jewels on the card and complete it. When you complete a setting card, you lose one of your dwarf tokens. So as you complete more and more cards, you lose your ability to go down into the mine. You can trade jewels with a common pool of jewels that sits next to the board. It's known as the black market. And then you can also take an ability card. There is an array of 4 or 5 different ability cards that are available at any given time. And these ability cards can do some wild things to help you move throughout the mine. The game ends once someone has completed as many setting cards as they have dwarves, because remember, you use up a dwarf every time you complete one of those. Or you can also work on completing the Brisingamen, which is this special necklace for Freya. Special cards will come out of the deck throughout the game that are different pieces of the Brisingamen, and they all require a special jewel color that's a gold jewel color that's not used for any of the other normal setting cards. And if 4 of those are completed collectively by all the players, the game will also end when that happens. So player with the most points at the end is the winner. And that's Freya's Folly.
Yep.
So this game, to jump back to Dwarves Inc., and the question that we led off that review with, this game also has a very interesting look to it and an interesting table presence. So I'm curious what you thought of this game when you initially saw it on the table and initially saw the box cover in particular. You know, what did it make you think you were getting into when you saw it?
So I've been playing board games for over 10 years. I've played hundreds of board games at this point now. This is the worst box cover ever. Number one. There is no box cover worse than this. It's terrible. It is so bad. You look at this box cover and you will think, I'm not playing that. It's terrible. It's kind of a joke in board games of having people staring stoically at you on a box cover. Tons of games do it. Kalis, Macau, Hamburg, and they all have these weird people on them. This is the worst I've ever seen. So it's a deterrent, right?
Yeah.
But don't let it deter you, because I think this game has some good features, but it's problematic. I will say, though, the board I actually like, and it's because it reminds me of Dig Dug.
Yeah.
It's a very Dig Dug vibe.
Which I like Dig Dug, so maybe that's why I like it. But the board, actually, I enjoyed the look of it, even though it is very simple in its appearance.
It's very functional.
Yeah. My initial take was, okay, this is Dwarves, but this is like Snow White Dwarves, not the cool kind, you know?
Right. Collecting gems in the mountain.
I just kept hearing like, tick, 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 you know? The whole time I was playing the game. It's terrible.
So how did y'all feel about the game outside of the horrendous box art? What did you like?
I definitely appreciated the movement mechanics of this game. It was refreshing to have something different, I guess. It's easy to have spaces on a board, and on your turn, you can move a number of spaces. You could say the lanterns are just like spaces, but the fact that they threw in this whole you can jump over other players made it really interesting. While it's tempting to go off on your own, you actually need to stay near your opponents and compete over the gems that are close to each other in order to take advantage of the movement rules and cover more ground. I actually made that mistake in the game that I played, and I was dead last. I was like, I'm going to go over here where no one else is going to go, and that was awful.
Yep.
Because I didn't have the special move cards, and I didn't have anyone to help leapfrog, and it didn't matter that I wasn't having to compete over the gems. I couldn't get to the gems because you can't move that fast.
Right. Nor could you get back to the surface.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. It is expensive to move in this game if you're not near other people.
Yeah. This is a movement efficiency game.
Yeah.
Basically. Like looking for those opportunities. How can I maximize my movement by jumping over as many people as possible? Sometimes me. Setting myself up for those big moves to where I can move farther than other people and hopefully get to go where I want to go.
Yep.
And sometimes that will just tactically come up for you in an advantageous way. Sometimes you can set that up for yourself, which I enjoyed.
It's almost like movement is more important than going after particular gems, right? It's like move and get gems as quickly as you can. Forget what types they are. Forget what you're getting. Just get in and get out as fast as you can. And that seems to be a big part of this game.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that. That's something that I noted too, is the more I played this, the more I started to realize, and this might be a little bit of a con with the game, is that it almost seems as if indiscriminately grabbing gems and just getting up there and completing orders is maybe best, which is a little bit disappointing because you would want to think, okay, I'm going down and that cluster of gems looks really good for me. I'm going to try to grab that.
It has 2 of the 3 that I need or something. Right.
But one of the problems I think with this game is your order cards, they tell you what you need, but there are 8 of them available to you at any time. Mm-hmm. That's quite a few.
Yep.
Right? So obviously the more setting cards you have available to complete, the greater your odds become of being able to complete it just by randomly grabbing whatever, right? It just becomes a little bit too easy.
I think the other concern is you're not really incentivized to take those cards early. As soon as you take those, you're telling everyone, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And that can be dangerous.
Because there are things. I don't know if we're trying to talk about the thief card.
Yeah, we should.
I think we kind of need to talk about it because it was the thing that broke this game for me. I'm not saying that it's broken. I'm just saying that I don't love it as much because this is part of the game. With the thief mechanism, you can use it to take a gem from somebody.
2 gems.
2 gems, right? So it's worse than I even remember.
Gosh, this card.
So if you, take a order card and you've got it sitting out in front of you, your opponents can look at your things that you're trying to collect and go, oh, he needs blue and green? Cool. I'm going to take his blue and green. And it's devastating.
Yep. As soon as one of those cards comes out, it's like there's a cloud hanging over everyone's head until that card is gone.
Everybody just gasps whenever it comes. Everyone's like, it's a thief card. How'd you feel about it?
About the thief?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first game that we played of this, I was like, this card's terrible. I hate this. The second game we played, I started to get smarter about it because you can combat this a little bit. If you know that you have a particular setting that you're going for, you just set it up so that you exit the mine and immediately complete it. That way, if you're going to get gems stolen from you, they're not going to be the ones that you really needed.
Well, that was what I was getting ready to say, is that you may be able to avoid it, but it's indirectly affecting your play, right? Like, everybody is scared to death of these cards.
Just the fact that they're in the game affects your whole like way that you're thinking about how you're going to play the game. It's weird to me.
It is. If you have that thief card, life is good. You know, I'm just doing whatever I want. I'm not scared. I don't feel afraid. But, man, everybody else is just terrified, right? Like, oh, I've got to stay below the surface. I can't go up. I can't do this. And I don't know. It just seemed to... It pissed a lot of people off. It made people mad because the game is like 95% strategic, right? And then you have this one card that's like, take that, you know? And in games like where the game is mostly strategic and then you have that one little take that card, it tends to become an annoyance. I always compare it to Lords of Waterdeep and the Mandatory Quest card. A great strategic game, and then you've got this one card that's the screw you card. I hate that. And it's powerful. When that thief card comes out, what happens? People take it immediately, right? You just take it, right?
Right.
In my opinion, if you ever have a card that as soon as it hits the table, it's just you take it and there's no questions asked, it's too strong. There should be some decision space going on there.
Yeah, I don't mind take that mechanism when the scope of it is limited, right? But when you have something that not only is it going to mean that maybe sometimes you lose a couple gems to somebody, but that everyone's strategy while you're playing the game is, I'm going to stay up underground until I can 1-2 complete an order on my turn. It should not influence the entire game, and I feel like it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, the thief card's not the only one, too. You know, we talked about card balance with Dwarves Inc. Yeah. In this game, there aren't very many special ability cards. I think there's 5 or 6 different abilities. There are a lot of cards, but there aren't many different cards. And another one in particular, the strength card, I don't think we saw anybody take that a single time in any of the games that we played. So this is a special card that you can give to a dwarf, and for 2 turns while he's in the mine, he can block every other player from being able to leapfrog him, which seems like it could be useful in the right circumstances. But when we go back to that original point of, well, it's better to just grab any jewels than grab specific jewels, it's like, well, if this person's going to block this particular tunnel, I'm just going to go this way and get these jewels over here.
Or just wait till it expires because
or just wait 2 turns.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Do something else somewhere else in the mine for 2 turns and then come back and do what you needed to do. And so I think this game suffers a little bit from that card balance issue, right? Like speed in particular was like incredibly valuable.
Another no-brainer.
And I was never able to get one just because of the timing. As soon as that card comes out, it's gone.
If it comes out in the first 2/3 of the game, it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yep.
So I know we've been talking about a lot of cons. That's okay. We kind of mix our pros and cons these days. But one thing I did want to go back to that I liked about the game, it felt like mining to me. When I was going deep into the mine, I felt like I was going down there. You know what I mean? Because when you get down there,
you can't just resurface.
Feel like you've got a long way to go to get back up. And I enjoyed how that evoked that feeling of, okay, I'm going to go deeper and try to get better stuff, but it's going to take me a while to get back up. I don't know. It evoked those feelings. I enjoyed that part of it.
So one other thing that I wanted to get y'all's opinion on was, what did you think about the game arc? Obviously, everyone's sending dwarves down into the mine to get jewels, and they're completing these setting cards. The very first game of this that we played ended very abruptly, right? So, surprisingly so. We were playing, everybody was slowly working through the mine, and all of a sudden, Chris was like, boom, 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 completed all of his setting cards, and then the game was over. And we were like, what just happened? So, I'm curious your thoughts on the overall game arc.
Yeah, it didn't really bother me. I'm just saying that because I won.
Well, sure, yeah.
I feel like the game arc was fine. I think what you have to be careful of in this game, and I think it just comes with repeated play, is because you have to have dwarves at the surface to fulfill orders, you have to know when to stop sending your people down or when to stop going deep, right? Because if you begin a deep run towards the end of the game, he's never making it out.
Right.
It's just not going to happen, right?
I lost the last game we played because of this, and I was sick about it because I could have won the game, but I had sent my last dwarf down into the mine just as insurance against a thief card to make sure that just in case someone screwed me over and took what I needed, I would have somebody who was at least somewhat in the mine able to grab something and come back out. But it turned out that the thief card didn't hit me, and I had the ability to complete my last card, but my stupid dwarf was in the mine and was nowhere near anyone else, so it took him like 3 turns to get out of the mine.
Which was all the time I needed.
And I lost the game because of it. So, yeah.
I definitely think it's a thing that probably comes with learning. You learn not just to pay attention to what orders people have in front of them that are unfulfilled, but what does their dwarf stash look like?
Right.
Final thoughts?
Let's do it. I enjoyed this game. I'll just come out and say it right away. I thought this was a fun game. The leapfrog movement puzzle of this game and trying to be the most efficient with your movement, I haven't really seen anything like this in a game before, at least not implemented this way. I thought it was very clever. I enjoyed that. Now, having said that, do I have some concerns regarding the indiscriminate grabbing of gems? Possibly. I still feel like maybe I need to play it more to come to a conclusion on that. That's possibly a problem, but I think the novelty of that movement puzzle is enough to overcome that for me, and even the inequalities in some of the cards. Again, I think there are some issues with the cards, but I still had fun. I still had fun playing the game. I don't think it's an excellent game, but I think it's a good one, and it's one I would play again. I enjoyed it. I gave this game a 4.
Cool.
Yeah.
So overall, I give Freya's Folly a 3. That might improve for me after more plays. I felt like the experience was just a little bland. It didn't excite me. I put a lot of emphasis in my review on the power cards because I feel like that is the unique aspect of the game. It's a unique aspect of the game, at least. But I think some of the imbalances there just pose some issues with gameplay, like the whole causing everyone to hide underground so they don't get
They're
stolen.
not coming on the surface.
Yeah, that just bugged me a lot, and I feel like it does have too big of an impact on the game for me to really say it's a game that I like. So 3 for me.
Okay.
I had a hard time with this one. I was between a 3 and a 4. I ultimately settled on the 3. I did enjoy playing this game, but I think that some of that balance and some of the arbitrariness of the gem selection took it down a slight bit for me. I would happily play it again.
Then that's not a 3.
So maybe that makes it a 4. I don't know. This is a very non-committal answer, I suppose. But yeah, I settled on 3 just because of that. I was like, long term, would I want to continue playing this game? Would I want to introduce it to more people? And I think that compared to other games that I know and enjoy, I had to factor that in a little bit. And so I think that's what pushed it down for me. Just some of those rough edges, I think, take it away from being a game that I'd be super excited to introduce someone to a game that I'm like, yeah, it's good and I would play it, but I don't know that I would be excited about taking it and introducing it to other people. So as much as I wanted to like it, and as much as I do enjoy some of the mechanisms that we talked about, I do wonder if it would be improved by a couple like minor house rules. Like take that 8 card setting pile down
5.
to 4 or 5. Change the strength card to make it a permanent ability for the time that you're in the mine. Versus,
light the thief card on fire.
2 turns. Yeah, change the thief card somehow. I don't know, but yeah. So I settled on a 3.
So does this mean you're selling it?
Maybe you want it?
Oh, yeah, I do.
All right.
Give me a good price.
We'll discuss.
Yeah, we will.
So if you want to know where you can get it, I have a copy.
Which I'm buying. Not going on BGG, sorry. So this is an old game, as Jason mentioned, 2005, so it's way out of print. But there are 10 copies on BGG for decent prices, so if you want to give it a shot, check it out.
Well, those are our thoughts on Freya's Folly. In a mysterious mountain, there lie many veins of precious stones. Inside the mountain, players build tunnels, establish mine stations, discover veins of precious stones, and collect these stones to sell. The players score points for stations in nearby cities and for precious stones sold. The player who leads on the scoring track at the end of the game is the winner.
Cavum, published in 2008 by White Goblin Games, also by Eagle Griffin Games and Hutch. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 2,307. They're not too bad. And a lot of that is probably because of the designers. So this is a Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling design. And they have many excellent designs.
Dynamic duo.
Dynamic duo indeed. Tikal, Cuzco, Mexico, the Masks Trilogy, Torres, Palaces of Carrara, Colbaron, Linko, card game, which we like, yeah, or a Bluxen. So yeah, just awesome designs from these guys. They don't disappoint. So I heard about this one on Heavy Cardboard. Edward Euler, they did a dedicated review of Cavum, and it caught my attention because the whole idea of building tunnels in the mountain with dynamite and blasting dynamite sounded interesting and fun to me. So I was able to acquire a copy at some point along the way. So that's how I heard about it. All right, brief rule summary. Cavum is a pretty involved game. It's not super heavy, but it's not light either, so I'm not going to go into super detail on all the rules, but I'll just give you a general idea of how it works. All right? So in Cavum, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take your mining company into this giant mountain that is surrounded on all sides by 5 different cities. Okay? So you're blasting tunnels, you're creating tunnels through the mountain in an attempt to discover veins of precious gems. You will establish stations within those mountains in order to prospect for those gems, and then you'll take those gems and you will craft them, once again, like in Freya's Folly, into jewelry that you will turn into points. Okay? So there are 3 rounds, or 3 phases, and each phase or round consists of 4 sections. So there will be a bid for turn order. This is a standard English-style auction, and that pretty much determines the turn order for everything you do in the game. Your selection of a setting card, the order in which you go when you begin to lay tunnels in the mountain, everything. You will then select settings or recipes that you'll use for the gems to craft your jewelry. And then you'll go into the second part of your turn, which is to build, and this is the meat of the game. So what makes this game interesting is on your player board, you have 12 actions at your disposal. And on your turn, you can do anywhere from 1 to 4 of those actions. Okay? So, for example, I could just choose one thing, lay a tunnel, and then Jason could go. Or I could lay 2 tunnels, a station, and a vein, and then Jason could go. And then when Jason goes, he can do between 1 and 4 things from his board on his turn. So as you can see in this game, what's going to happen is that some people have the potential to finish much earlier or much later than other people, based on how they decide to divvy up those actions and how they perform them in the round. So let's talk a little bit about the actions in detail. So when you lay a tunnel, you just lay a tile on the board, you're extending pre-existing tunnels. It's important to note there are 4 different types, and you have 1 of each. There's a 2 exit, a 3 exit, a 4 exit, and a 6 exit tunnel. So the 6 exit, these are hex tiles, so there's an exit on every side. And when you're laying tiles, you can lay higher exit tunnels on top of lower exit tunnels. And
even if they don't preserve the original routes.
Even if they don't preserve the original routes, which is very important. Okay? So in addition to the tunnels, you can establish a vein of jewels or gems that you can put out on the board. You'll have this little stack of tokens, 4 gems of a color. You can do something called an option, where you can basically turn a tile in and gain additional tunnel tile or an additional vein. You can establish a station in the mountain or in the surrounding cities if you're connected to them. And stations are important because your final action is the prospect action. And the way that works is you will select one station on the board and another station on the board that you own, and you will follow that connected series of tunnels from one station to another station, not passing through opponents' stations, and every gem vein you run through, you'll get 1 gem of that color. So you're trying to make a long connected route, hitting as many veins as possible. Okay?
Sounds difficult, and it is.
It sounds hard, doesn't it? So after all that's done, you'll go into a scoring. It's real simple. The way it works is every city, you'll get a number of points equal to the number of empty hexes in that city if you have a presence there. Okay? And then after that, the dynamite. So I didn't mention this, but you can also lay dynamite on your turn. And what this does is basically every hex on the dynamite hex and the top tile of every hex around it explodes. And they come off the board, and you'll have to reestablish connections in the next round. Then, finally, there's a sell phase where you can sell gems back to market at a price. More gems out on the board make the gems more valuable to sell, and then you can complete your jewelry for points. As I mentioned, 3 rounds. Most points at the end of the 3 rounds is the victor. that's generally how you play. I left some details out, but I don't want to run too long. So that's how you play Cavum. There are a lot of interesting mechanisms to dive into, and we'll talk about them. There's a lot to go over here. But one thing I wanted to start off is talk about the theme a little bit. I've been hot on theme today. I don't know why. It's usually Cameron's thing.
I mean, it is a theme-based episode. So.
It is a mining theme episode. So I would be interested to hear how you guys felt like the theme played out here. Obviously, I enjoyed the theme in Freya's Folly. I felt like I was really mining and going deep, and it made sense to me. How did y'all feel about this theme?
It's a bit of an oddball theme.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you definitely get the feeling of mining, I think.
Making tunnels, I guess.
Right, you're making tunnels. You're going into this huge unknown mountain trying to search for these veins. Some of the city concepts are a little strange to me, like the laying of stations. I'm like, why am I creating a station here? Aside from, blocking somebody else from being able to collect gems. There are some pieces to the theme that don't really fit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But
I mean, anytime I'm, running a mining company, the first thing I think about is how do I blow up my opponent mining company's track?
How do I cave in my opponents so they get trapped inside this mountain?
Right. Or how do I make their tunnels disappear and go a different direction?
Yeah, it was funny. Every time I played this, and I don't know why, because I usually don't think a whole lot about theme, but I just found myself laughing about how silly it was. I'm laying this dynamite here to intentionally blow up this guy's tunnel system to entrap him in here, I guess. I don't know. It's a bizarre theme, for sure.
There were times when I blew up my own track just because I knew it was going to blow up Bill's,
Right.
Because I needed to get back at Bill for several offenses.
Bill probably did something in a game 2 weeks ago that he needs to be punished for in a game. He's mean.
Bill
You're
was
just
being
sore
really
about
mean.
that because Bill always goes directly after
Oh, dude.
you.
Man.
Based on his philosophy about who to attack. Who do you think is going to win?
I was so salty. We played this game last time with Bill, and literally his first move, he was like screwing me over. I was like, dude, Bill, what the heck? We haven't even started yet, hardly.
And then it turned into a fighting match all around the table.
I think we all managed to screw each other over in the first round.
We did. I say that tongue in
The
cheek.
temperature in the room rose rapidly.
I love Bill. I really do. He's great. But I did find it humorous that literally like his second tile placement, he's like already diverting my track system. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be this way, huh? All right.
The ironic thing about that was he had just said, it's actually harder than you think to divert people's tracks.
Yep.
And he
Whoop,
does
there
it on
it
his
goes.
first turn.
All right. Well, so all that being said, what do you guys think about this game? What did you like about it?
So I think one of the first things that I appreciated, there's several ways to score in this game. And interestingly enough, I think you actually do have to utilize all three of them to win. You have to fulfill orders. You kind of have to make some points at some point on the color cells.
Yep.
And then you have to score points on cities.
The city scoring, yeah.
Like
Can't neglect that.
I like it when the ways that they give you to score points, you have to take advantage of them. You can't necessarily neglect anything and just focus on one thing.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I agree with you. And I will make one quick point because I want to hear what Jason has to say about this too, is that while I don't think you can entirely ignore any of them, I don't think you have to be evenly distributed in either of them either. I think you can really focus heavily on trying to do jewelry and do well, but I think if you just are like, city score and screw it, I'm not even going to worry about it, you could really be in trouble if you do that. I think you at least have to be doing a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we found in most of the games that we played, for most people, the actual jewelry that you completed by the end of the game was roughly 50 or 60% of your total score.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely one of the main focuses, but it's not the only one, and it can't be, or you're not going to be in it.
One other thing I really liked, so this game really reminded me a lot of Age of Steam. I don't know if y'all got that feeling or not, but in Age of Steam, near the end of the game, when the routes get really spaghetti-like and interconnected, and you're trying to identify those long routes where you can pick up the colored cubes and make the deliveries, it evoked a similar feeling in me of looking at the board and seeing this vast network of interconnecting tunnels and being like, okay, I'm going to put a station here and here and here, and I'm going to run through all these different veins and pick up all these gems. Very similar to me. It just kept hitting me, and I love Age of Steam. It's top 10 for me, and so I enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, I felt that too. Age of Steam with dynamite.
Yeah. Age of Steam where you can blow up people's tracks. Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Speaking about the dynamite, though, I know we joke about it and obviously take that aspects of it like weren't so great. But I did appreciate that at least they blew up after you score points.
Yeah, when you first explained the rules to this and you started talking about the dynamite tiles, I was like, I'm going to hate this game. It's going to be like Age of Steam, just with chaos. Because stuff's going to be blowing up all over the place and you're never going to be able to control what you're doing. When we actually played it, I found that I actually really like the dynamite aspect of this game. Because while it can be chaotic, and everyone has a dynamite tile every round, so it's going to happen. It's not like it's an optional thing. Everyone has to place a dynamite tile. I mean, I guess you could throw it away, but you're throwing away one of your 12 actions. There are so many different little wrinkles to how that dynamite works that I really enjoyed it. First of all, the dynamite tiles are tracks. Or tunnels. I'm going to say tracks now because you said Age of Steam. But they're tunnels. So until they blow up at the end of the round, you can treat them like tunnels and you can use them to get places.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you can combat dynamite, right? So if you build a station on a tile, it can't be blown up. If you put a vein on a tile, it can't be blown up. If you put another tile on top of a tile, like changing the route, only the top tile is going to be blown up.
Right.
So there's so many different layers to how you can protect yourself from it. I really enjoyed that part of it. And I completely did not expect to. I thought that was going to be my least favorite aspect of the game, but I really enjoyed how it worked.
Yeah, I did a total 180 on the dynamite too. The first game or two, I wasn't too impressed with it, and I think it was because the strategy of the dynamite was kind of lost on me. I wasn't really getting it. I found I didn't see how I could use it aggressively because it's like, well, they're going to score their city anyway, and to get their gems, I can't stop it. What's the point? So I found I was kind of using it just to get places. But then in the more recent plays, it dawned on me. I was like, but if I put this next to them and blow up their track, they have to spend their turns rebuilding that tunnel system instead of spreading farther out and getting to those cities on the other side of the board. I just missed that the first couple of plays. And then I was like, oh, whoa. There's more here than I realized.
Yeah,
right?
I actually found myself in a couple of those situations because I think at one point I was bumped up next to Bill with the tunnels that I was like, maybe I'll take this action first and maybe Bill will build back the track that we both need.
Do it for me.
And I don't have to do it.
Yep, totally. This was another thing that was lost on me the first play or two. If you see somebody's network that they're going to try to run to get gems when they prospect, and you look at their player board, and they don't have the 4 exit or the 6 exit tile anymore, and they have like a 2 exit tile in their route, you can wreck their life. And it's very fun being able to drop the 3 exit tile, which is basically a Y, and now their tunnel system just got chopped in half. It's like totally interrupted, right?
I never did that to Jason.
So you
did that to me on the first turn, man.
You could be very mean in this game, and you have to be mindful of it as a player. Like, what can I do to others, but what am I leaving open for others to do to me, right, before I prospect?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. Because then you're starting to do that math of, okay, well, I have this 1 and this 3 tile. I have to use them somewhere. Where's the least impactful place that I can put these? And then you start locking things down with those 4s and 6s. Yeah, it was a really cool
element.
Yep.
And speaking of which, the other thing I really appreciate about this game, the flexibility of those option tiles is cool.
Yes.
Right? Because it can become anything you need it to become. And because obviously everyone else at the table is taking turns, the board's changing. So maybe what you think you needed to do, you can't do anymore, except for that you have an option tile. So right, so you can pivot and say, well, I was actually going to put a station here, but because he prospected and took the last gem up, I'm actually going to use this to put another vein down and put what I want on it. And the flexibility there made it really powerful. It's limited, and I think it should be limited. 5 option tiles wouldn't make sense. Just doing whatever you want freely on your turn. But being able to, in a narrow sense, choose what you need to do at the moment that you need to do it is pretty cool.
They can really help you. Not to mention, you can just spend them for points, too, right? You have an interesting decision. It's like, do I just use these 2 option tiles and score 6 points, or do I just get more stuff? Usually, you'll get more stuff because it can get so vicious on the board. But, yeah, just such a great feature.
So do we want to move on to cons? What were some of the things that you did not like about this game?
Yeah, so the one thing that bothered me about this game was the final sell. And I didn't cover in the rules because I knew I would talk about it now. But basically what happens is at the very, very end of the game, people are going to have leftover gems that they couldn't use in the color cell or in finishing jewelry or whatever. And you sell those off for points. Fine. Okay, sure. But how they do this is the player in very last gets to sell their gem first. They sell it for its value. They move up the number of points. And then if they're still last, they go again. And then if they're still last, they sell again. And so it will go like that until the last place player sells all their stuff, or if maybe they move into third. Now the person in fourth sells until they are not in last anymore. And so if you're near the top of the leaderboard, you're getting to sell last, which means those gems will be worth the least. Mm-hmm. I don't like catch-up mechanisms in games, and this is a bad one. This is probably the worst I've ever seen in a game. It's just directly rewarding people for being in last, basically. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand that. I think catch-up mechanisms can be done well, but this one, you're punishing the person in first for being in first, right? I just don't get that. I don't think you should be punished for doing well in a game. It feels like the selling of those gems should have been more evenly distributed and not just the last place player gets to sell other stuff. I didn't like that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too after we talked about it the other night. And this is what we do, right? When we break down games and we're like, this isn't bad. What might fix it for us? And I felt like one of the things that we said might fix it for us is there's this turn order token that you have, and it's used at various points elsewhere in the game. And it was like, why didn't they just use it there? Because the thing is, in order to get first place, you had to bid down your points, right? So you're already getting docked for that. But if you bought it, you should have the opportunity, I think probably first prerogative to sell your stuff back.
Why not sell in player order? We've been doing it like that the whole game.
Right.
And yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this was probably one of the things that I struggled with the most about this game. But to be fair, I don't think we ever saw it really change much towards the end of the game, right? Which doesn't mean it's not a bad
it could.
element. It could definitely have an effect.
If people just so happen to cluster near each other at the end of the game, the last place player could
jump into
possibly win.
Yeah, that's true.
But it never happened in our games.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just didn't like it.
Yep. I had one other point, which is just a given with route building games, is that the board can become pretty chaotic. And the way that the tracks run is a little counterintuitive, because in most track laying games, you can't go around a 30-degree turn.
Right.
And so trying to just visually map out, okay, oh yeah, I can go that way, and I can't go that way because there's a station blocking it, that can get a little confusing. And the game is fiddly as all get out, because there's a bajillion tiles, and then there's stuff blowing up, so there's tiles coming off the board, and
And these gem tokens are like 6mm discs that you stack on top of each other like pancakes, and they're falling over all the time. Oh my word, terrible.
But I mean, that's a very small con in my book for this game. All right, we want to do final thoughts?
Yeah, let's do it, Jason. Get us rolling.
Can lead us off. All right. This game has so many tough decisions in it, and every single one of them matters. It has a super tight action economy, which I loved. The route building aspect of it, while it can be visually confusing at times, is fun. It's different, and it just has that little bit of extra carnage thrown in there with the dynamite that just keeps you on your toes the whole time. I thought this was a great game. I would play it again right now. It was great, and get ready for it. I gave this one a 6.
Oh, whoa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
I really enjoyed this one. I thought it's a great game. It is a heavier game for sure.
Yeah.
It's not your entry level, just bring it out on a casual game night type game. But for what it is and its heaviness rating, I thought this game was fantastic.
Awesome. All right. 6.
Cool. Well, I also really enjoyed my play of this game, minus all the take that drama. I feel like it had fantastic decisions to make, a lot to consider. One of the biggest things to consider throughout the game is where you're vulnerable and how to mitigate losses to your mining path. I enjoyed that tension throughout the game. You never really feel safe, and I think that's part of the design. For better or worse, Cavum is definitely not for the faint of heart. I think if I played this game even more, I'd appreciate it even more than I do. And I kind of waffled between a 4 and a 5 on it. And honestly, from our conversation and especially the feeling of wanting to play it more, I'm going to go with a 5.
So for me, one thing about this hobby, I wouldn't say it bothers me, but one thing I've noticed playing as long as we have is that I've noticed in a lot of games that with repeated plays, games tend to go down for me. You play it the first time, it's new, you're trying to discover it, you're trying to understand it. You play it again, it gets easier, and you've kind of come to a strategy that you feel like is really strong, and then the game isn't really interesting anymore. That doesn't happen in all games, but it happens, right? I find that I have that happen to me, especially in more modern games that are in like the last 5 years. Just the interesting decisions kind of go away. Cavum was the opposite of that for me. I found that as I played it, it got richer because I just kept seeing things that I didn't see before. Like every time I played it, I was like, dang, I never thought of that. And then I played it again. Like I played it with Jason the other night, and he did a couple of things. I was like, shoot, I never even thought of that. It just got better. And actually, the first time I played it, I didn't love it. I was actually around a 3, and I was thinking I was probably maybe going to end up selling it. And it's a 5 for me now. And honestly, it could go higher as I play it more. It's just emerging. Every time I play it, I'm just more impressed by it. So could be a 6 in the future. For now, it's a solid 5. I love it. Such a cool game. Really like it.
All right. Cool. Well, can we find it? And if so, where?
You can find it. So there are 32 copies of this game on BGG Marketplace. Wow. And it's actually in stock at Noble Knight as well, which is an awesome online retailer who kind of specializes in harder to find games. So you can get this game if you want it. Pretty good prices, and we recommend it. Obviously, in our scores, we think it's pretty fantastic.
Give it a shot.
For sure.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Hidden Gems. We want to thank everybody for joining us in this mining episode. If you like what we're doing here, please remember it's a huge help to us if you'd want to leave a rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow us on our various social media platforms. We're really active on Instagram. Check us out on the BGG Guild if you want to interact with us or share a game that you think is a hidden gem. And until next time, I'm your host, Cameron.
This is Chris.
I'm Jason.
Thanks for listening. This episode of Hidden Gems, number 9, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on June 6, 2021. Join us again in 2 weeks when we will be highlighting 3 games from an underappreciated game designer and publisher, Corna van Moorsel of Folly Games. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Katelyn Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Katelyn Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.